Get ready for Benjamin Knight Fuchs Live. Coming to you live on a Monday evening. Ben, how are you?
I'm good. Good to see you, Liam. Happy Thanksgiving and all that stuff.
Yeah, man.
Speaking of Thanksgiving, we're going to talk about the digestive system today.
Okay.
And something that's really kind of, I don't know, it's not the sexiest topic in the world, but it's really important. I consider the substance that we're going to talk about today to be arguably the most important fluid in the body, next to the blood, of course.
Really?
Maybe the lymph. Yeah, it's super important, and hardly anybody ever talks about it or knows about it, except for under certain circumstances when they burp it back up, and that's bile.
Okay.
Elliot, what do you think of when you think of bile? What's the one thing you think of?
I think that bile it's not like a stomach acid, but it's somewhere within the digestive process that helps you digest food.
That's basically it. Yeah, that's basically it. And I mean, there's some specifics which we'll get into, but that's what most people think of. But it turns out bile is a lot more things than it has a lot more functions than that, and we're going to discuss it. And it's really important because bile and the gallbladder and the liver kind of go hand in hand. The bile system is made up of bile, the gallbladder, the liver, and then maybe you could say the ducts, the bile ducts,
Right.
that where the bile flows from. And the whole thing works through the digestive system, but it also plays a very important role, as it turns out, in metabolism in general, in how the body handles nutrition in general, how the body detoxifies substances, particularly estrogen, as well as drugs and certain metals that get excreted through the bile system. And this is very important because we're very glib and very unappreciative of the bile system, so much so that almost 1 million gallbladders are removed every year out of people's bodies. And of course, the gallbladder is the main structure that holds the bile.
1 million.
What's that?
1 million gallbladders removed every
Something
year.
like 700,000, I think. 600 to 700,000. Almost 1 million. 3/4 of a million. So that's a lot of gallbladders.
Yeah.
And the main reason for gallbladder removal is sludgy, sticky bile that's forming stones. It's not a gallbladder problem. It's a bile problem. See, bile recirculates. Well, just real quick digression how bile works. You eat a food, it goes into your digestive system, drops into the food drops from the stomach into the intestine. And as soon as that happens, a bunch of bile gets squirted from the gallbladder. So far, so good. That bile that is squirted from the gallbladder dissolves fatty substance. It breaks up fats. It's like a soapy material that breaks up fats and releases fatty vitamins.
Okay.
Vitamins A, D, E, K, essential fatty acids, as we'll show here in a couple minutes, also minerals. But here's where it gets problematic, is that bile then will recirculate. Some of it gets dumped out, and that's also important because that toxins are getting dumped out in the stool. Your stool is the brown in your stool is bile. And it all gets dumped out with all the dirt and the toxins and the old hormones and old cells, et cetera. They get dumped out, but a lot of that bile recirculates. It goes back into the liver, back into the gallbladder, back into the intestine. It circulates. And as it's circulating, it's picking up dirt and toxins.
Sure.
And immune factors. And while some of it gets dumped, some of it stays in the bile, and the bile can become sludgy. And this sludgy bile can block the ducts that go from the gallbladder to the intestine, and that can cause tremendous pain. And understandably, when somebody has that condition, they're going to say, get this darn thing out of me. But the problem is now you're setting yourself up for a lifetime of health problems. All because you couldn't clean the bile out. The only way to clean the only solution you had for your dirty, sludgy bile causing stones was to have the gallbladder removed. And, there's a lot of money to be made in gallbladder removal, so there's incentives for healthcare professionals to do it. You want to consider gallstones, which is what we're talking about here, the sticky, sludgy bile, to be a food issue, as well as a toxin issue. And that's very important because without a gallbladder, you're going to have a lot of problems. You're going to have problems the rest of your life. Now, doctors will say, well, you can have bile go into your intestine from the liver. And that's true. Some of it will. But the problem there is not enough of it will. And what's worse is when you have chronic secretion of bile from the liver into the intestine, eventually the body will start to flush that bile out because bile is irritating to the intestine. And that can cause chronic diarrhea, which is what people have when they have one of the symptoms of a gallbladder removal is chronic diarrhea. So it can cause all kinds of problems. You want to keep your gallbladder. If you have gallstones, you want to fix your diet. And there's other strategies we'll talk about here in a second. The reason I've been talking about bile for a long time because it's so important for hormones and for elimination of hormones and toxins. We learned about it in pharmacy school as a route of elimination for many drugs. We talk about drugs being eliminated through the bile or being eliminated through the kidneys. A lot of drugs are eliminated through the bile. The reason I thought maybe bring it to my attention is I'm in the skin business, as you know, and I read this article in the Journal of Investigative Dermatology. You can put the first slide up. Bile acids may improve skin inflammation with patients with psoriasis. And this is very important because without vitamin A and D, your skin's going to be jacked up. And if your bile's not working, you're going to be deficient in vitamin A and D because you need bile to absorb vitamin A and D, even supplements, vitamin A and D. So that got me thinking. That's why I really want to talk about bile. So if you're dealing with a skin issue that involves toxicity or autoimmunity or excessive oiliness, something that points to a deficiency in fatty vitamins or essential fatty acids, think of bile, and we'll talk about ways that you can support bile health. Actually, I'll tell you one way right now. You can actually get bile salts or bile acid or ox bile from a health food store. That's a great nutritional supplement for folks who don't have a gallbladder or also for folks who just want to support their bile system. Lecithin granules or lecithin oil can also be helpful for supporting bile. Stomach acid can be helpful for supporting bile secretion because stomach acid food that's been coated in stomach acid triggers bile secretion. If you don't make enough stomach acid, you're not going to get that bile secreted from the gallbladder. So making sure you're on stomach acid supplements or using HCl, hydrochloric acid supplements, or something called betaine HCl, which we have in our longevity enzymes. Next slide. So this is a slide that talks about the various things that bile does. Bile is important for controlling cell division. It's particularly skin cell division. That's why it plays a role in psoriasis, which is partially caused by excessive skin cell division. It plays a role in gene expression. It's an epigenetic factor. It controls the activation of genes, particularly genes that are involved in digestive health. It also plays a role in sugar metabolism. We're talking about that here because that's a very important place that bile plays a role. Bile is involved in the blood sugar system. Next slide. This slide talks about the pleiotropic roles. Pleiotropic means the multifunctional roles, the fancy biochemical word. When something's pleiotropic, it means it has a lot of functions. The pleiotropic roles of bile in metabolism. Everybody talks about bile for the digestive system, but how many people talk about bile as a source of control of energy expenditure by cells, as a control of intestinal motility for people who are constipated, for control of bacterial growth inside the intestine, good bacteria, as an anti-inflammatory, to control, as I mentioned earlier, glucose balance. These are all the multiple places that bile plays a role, and these are all functions that are going to be performing suboptimally if you don't have a gallbladder or if you have dirty, sludgy bile. So it's much more than a digestive issue. If they tell you, oh, take your gallbladder out, you'll be fine, we can give you enzymes. Bile controls so many different functions. So you want to just another reason to point out to your surgeon or your doctor if he tells you, oh, you just have your gallbladder taken out, why you want to keep your gallbladder. Next slide. Bile is also part of the endocrine hormone system. It functions like an endocrine hormone, meaning it plays a role in cholesterol, or it's going to play a role in cholesterol balance. It's going to play a role in diabetes, as we mentioned. It plays a role in atherosclerosis. In fact, according to this article, which is published in the European Molecular Biology Organization in 2006, bile-controlled signaling are promising drug targets. They want to figure out how to make drugs for this to treat common metabolic diseases, that is metabolic syndrome, liver disease, kidney disease, high blood pressure, heart disease, Alzheimer's disease, as well as obesity, diabetes, hyperlipidemia, excess blood fats, and atherosclerosis. Next slide. This is also very interesting. Bile plays a role in calcium absorption. We hear a lot of news about people saying, oh, calcium supplements will cause the buildup of calcium, blah, 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 or people taking calcium supplements and not getting the benefits of calcium. A lot of that could have to do with bile because bile is important for calcium absorption. This is an old article from the Journal of Biochemistry in 1966. Quote, bile and bile salts, which are components of bile, cause an increase in calcium absorption. Bile plays also, next slide, bile also plays a role in zinc absorption. Associations between zinc deficiency and metabolic abnormalities in patients with liver disease. These are patients who are going to have compromised bile function. This is from the journal Nutrients 2018. Quote, zinc deficiency is observed in patients with primary biliary cholangitis, autoimmune diseases, an autoimmune disease characterized by destruction of the bile ducts, leading to what's called cholestasis. That is a sludgy, sticky bile. So bile is important for zinc absorption. I love this next one. This is from Aquaculture Reports from 2024. It turns out that bile can be used in aquaculture with animals or with fish and livestock as a feed supplement to improve growth, performance, feed utilization, lipid metabolism, and digestive enzymes, and the function of digestive enzymes. Bile supplementation, quote, caused a significant increase in body weight, weight gain rate, specific growth rate, protein efficiency ratio, that's how well the body uses protein, circulating high-density lipoprotein levels, HDL levels, etc., immune globulins. There's so many different places where bile put in feed of aquaculture animals, that's fish mostly, but also livestock, become healthier, stronger, more vital, have better biochemistry simply by adding bile to their feed. Next one. Bile is a nutrient signaling hormone. It prepares the body for nutrition. Bile signals to the body that nutrients are on the way. Quote, this is really an interesting article from the journal Steroids from 2014. Chronic low-grade inflammation, which is associated with insulin resistance, may inhibit bile acid signaling and disrupt lipid metabolism. It's thought that issues with bile are linked to problems with blood sugar and with insulin. Both blood sugar and insulin are involved in growth, and insulin in particular is involved in feeding cells, nutrition. And it's thought that there may be a relationship between problems with bile and problems with how cells handle energy and handle nutrition. They go on to talk about it here. Disruption of bile signaling pathways may increase the risk of fatty liver and NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. They recently changed the name of that, by the way. I think they call it, I forgot what they call it, but they changed the name of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. In any case, 1 out of 3 Americans is dealing with that liver problem, and it may have to do with bile or with sludgy, sticky bile. Next slide. Along the same lines, this is from the Association for Association of Clinical Biochemistry and Laboratory Medicine. Bile and the metabolic syndrome. We know metabolic syndrome is an issue, is a blood sugar issue and an insulin issue. It affects all the organs that we just talked about earlier: the kidneys, the livers, the liver, the heart, the blood vessels, the brain, the bones, the skin. There's so many places where metabolic syndrome plays a role. Well, it turns out bile acids, quote, have important roles in the regulation of lipid, glucose, and energy metabolism. Metabolic disease linked to obesity, including type 2 diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, are associated with dysregulation of the bile system. Next slide. This is really important for women who are dealing with problems with estrogen, infertility, stress, weight gain, autoimmune disease, chronic inflammatory diseases of all kinds, depression, hypothyroidism. These are all can be associated with elevated estrogen. Of course, cancer, particularly breast cancer, endometriosis, fibromyalgia. Estrogen is a mess. You got to really be careful with your estrogen, ladies. And there's lots of ways to do that. Maybe we should talk about it on another video. But it turns out that elevated estrogen levels positively correlated with cholestasis, sludgy bile. It makes perfect sense because bile, one of bile's roles is to help the body eliminate estrogen. Estrogen is a very important hormone, but it has to be eliminated quickly because it's so powerful. And the way it's eliminated is through bile. If the bile is sludgy and sticky, the estrogen will accumulate. And that not only can this wreak havoc on all the systems we just talked about, but this elevated estrogen can mess up intestinal health, leading to more bile problems. So you get this vicious downward spiral. Next slide. One of the ways that you could build bile is with glycine. Glycine is an amino acid that's associated with the building of bile or the construction of bile, synthesis of bile. Quote, this is from, by the way, Cochrane Evidence Synthesis and Medicine, or Methods from 2024. Glycine administration increased bile production and hepatic circulation. That is the circulation of bile, of fluids through the liver, and blood flow through the liver as well. But also bile production. That's glycine, is a wonderful amino acid for the connective tissue, for detoxification, also for bile, for bone health, for really fabulously underappreciated amino acid. And glycine is found in meats, connective tissue meats, like the kind that you get in bone broth or bone soup. Not as much in muscle meats. It's found in connective tissue meats, and that's the kind of stuff like horse, like pig snouts and oxtail. You know, the kind of stuff that people used to throw out. And they make soup out of it, and that's got a lot of glycine in there. Gelatin is also a good source of glycine. You can get glycine supplements too. Next slide. Taurine is also a very important building block for the production of bile. This is an article from mthfrsupport.com. Taurine and its role in bile synthesis. Taurine provides a substrate for bile. Taurine is a very important player in the construction of bile. Taurine is a very fascinating amino acid for a lot of things, for the eyes, for the heart. Taurine has just recently, there was an article that came out, I think last year, that talked about taurine supplementation in high doses, like 3 grams of it a day, 3 to 6 grams of it a day, are associated with a significant improvement in longevity. So it's got anti-aging properties. You'll find taurine in Red Bull. In fact, I don't know if you know this, Liam, Red Bull gets its name from the taurine. Taurine is named after Taurus the bull. And taurine, yeah, isn't that cool? That's why they call it Red Bull.
It's very cool.
Right? Taurine is in Red Bull. Most people don't know it. Taurine is in Red Bull to kind of calm people down. Taurine's got a calming effect. It's used for seizure disorders. That's where it gets its name, Red Bull. Next slide. And this last one is 6 wonderful ways to support bile flow. In addition to using taurine supplements, in addition to using lecithin and hydrochloric acid, as we talked about earlier, you want to ensure adequate hydration. You want to use stomach bitters to support the secretion of all digestive juices. You can buy something called Swedish bitters or digestive bitters before your meal. You can start your meals off with dandelion greens or horseradish or parsley. Something that's bitter stimulates all the digestive juices, including bile. And then also, according to this article, we talked about use glycine and taurine. Identifying triggering foods and removing them. That's what we talked about, the sludgy bile associated with food toxins and food allergens. And then, interestingly, making sure that you're eating fat is very important. Fat stimulates the secretion of bile. If you're on a low-fat diet, you're not getting enough fat, you're not going to get enough bile secretion to suck up those fatty vitamins and those essential fatty acids. So making sure that you're getting enough quality fat is also important to assure adequate secretion of bile through the digestive system, through the intestine as you're eating your foods. So hopefully everybody has a newfound respect for this really, really cool molecule, bile. And don't let them take your gallbladder unless you're absolutely urgent.
Yeah.
No options.
With all this information, it almost sounds like criminal that a doctor would because after that, your body seems like it has to use more resources to digest, more resources to clean.
People without a gallbladder will have skin problems. They'll have metabolic problems, insulin problems, blood fat problems, chronic diarrhea. I mean, it's not good. And they'll say, oh, we'll give you bile replacements, and you want the real thing. Your gallbladder I don't know if I mentioned this. The gallbladder holds the bile. Bladder means bag. Gall means bile. The gallbladder is a bag of bile, and it holds all this bile for a big bolt, a big shot of it that gets into your intestine. Do you ever do this thing when you were a kid, where you take lemon juice and baking soda, and you squeeze them together, you put them together, you get this fizzing effect? That's what happens. That's what happens when the acid from the stomach, the acid from the digestive system or from the stomach, drops into the intestine and gets hit with bile. Bile's alkaline, acid is acid, and the acid from the food hits the alkaline from the bile. You get this fizzing reaction.
Wow.
And you can actually use this to clean your pots and pans.
Yeah, and even to unplug the
drain. Yes, that's right. Yeah. That's right. The combination of acid and base liberates things, and that's how the body works. Without bile, that's not going to happen, and without stomach acid, that's not going to happen either.
Okay, so I go to the doctor, and he goes, blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, such and such, I recommend, the removal of your gallbladder. So what are the number one top 3 things that you
change the way you eat? Change the way you eat, number 1. Use all the supplements we just talked about, including the stomach bitters to support the secretion, as well as the taurine and the glycine and the lecithin granules. And then also, if worse comes to worse, there's a procedure called... I forgot what they call it, but they can shoot sound waves at the stones, and they can dissolve the stones.
Wow!
Yeah, they call it light. What the heck do they call it? I forgot what they call it. But it's a procedure where they actually will shoot sound waves, and you can keep your gallbladder, and they'll just dissolve the stones, and then you can do all your strategies for making sure that you don't get any more gallstones.
That's incredible. That sounds like Star Trek space age stuff.
Yeah. I forgot the name of it is, but you can look that up. So it's sound waves that destroy the stones.
All right.
Thank you so much, Liam. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Ben. Thank you. There were great information for this. We're at the eating season today.
Eating season. That's right.
Yeah, Thanksgiving, Christmas. So.
And you know what? When you get to be our age, my age, it don't drop off so easily.
Yes, that's true, man.
That 10 pounds for Christmas, that'll be there probably in July, in the summertime.
I know the story. Yes, indeed.
All right. Thanks.
All right, everyone. Thank you. See you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.